What's up, everybody? Welcome back to part 3 of our music theory that everyone can understand. And I'm just going to open up my chat here and make sure I don't miss anybody's comments. There we go. And I'm going to also bring Facebook on the screen here real quick, do a little bit of administrative stuff here. Here we go. Miss anybody's comments. Let me mute myself here. There. All right. I see we got a couple people in the room already. So let's dive into it. So I don't know if you guys have caught the. Let me see here. Looks like my camera froze again. If you guys caught the first 2 episodes, I did one yesterday and one 2 days before that. But if you haven't, I strongly recommend that you go back and check those out, because everything we're getting into kind of builds off of everything that we've already covered. So a real quick recap. In episode 1, we talked a bit about what is music, which is, to refresh your memory, is 3 components: melody, harmony, and rhythm. Regardless of your genre, that's what makes all music, okay? And then we started to dive into an exploration of melody and harmony by first starting to figure out what a key is. And a key is, just to recap, it's a family of 7 notes that have been pulled out of the possible 12 notes that we have. We have a 12-tone system of music here, at least Western music. And if you go to India, Asia, these kind of areas, they have a totally different system of music, a totally different science of music. The mathematics are all different. But in Western music, it's referred to as diatonic. We have a 12-tone system, but each key is made up of 7 of those 12 tones, okay? And just to show you here what I'm talking about, if you look at the keyboard, if you look from here is C to C. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 before we get back to C again. However, the C major scale uses only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to C again. Okay, so like I said, 12-tone system, but each key is only 7 of those notes. And so we had to figure out a way in which to figure out what those notes are supposed to be. And we used the circle of fifths to do that. And just to refresh your memory on the circle of fifths real quick, it starts with a circle, of course, and then the letters that are around the circle, they're very specific to what position they are at. For example, the A here is at 3 o'clock. That means that the key of A has 3 sharps in it. And the way in which we determine which notes fall on which spot on the circle is we start at C. We always start at C because C has no sharps or flats. It's just white keys on the piano. Which means it's the 0 key. And then we move up in fifths. So we would go C, D, E, F, G, and that's how we determine what key has 1 sharp in it. Go from there, G, A, B, C, D, that's what key has 2 sharps, and so on and so forth. Once you know how many sharps are in a key, you use this little phrase down here: Father Charles goes down and ends battle, which is referred to as the order of sharps, to know which ones they are. So for example, we've got the key of E here. We write out the letters E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. We look here, E has 4 sharps. Which ones are they? The first 4. Father Charles goes down. Father Charles goes down. We put the sharps where they're supposed to be. Kaboom, there's the key of E. There's the E scale, okay? And then from there, that was basically lesson number 1. And again, I just breezed through that, so go and watch it if you don't understand how all that works, because it's important to what we're getting into now. And then yesterday, when we got together, we started to talk a little bit about, okay, well, now that you know how to figure out what notes are in a key, what the heck do we do with that information, okay? And the one thing that we talked about is using those notes, those specific notes, as a roadmap as to which notes are actually usable in that key. And then you could dance all over those notes any way you see fit in order to make melodies. I'm actually just going to open up my piano software here so I get some sounds from my piano. There it is. Okay, cool. So we talked about. I remember I pulled up just a backing track in C major, and C major is nice and easy, especially on the piano because there's no sharps or flats in it. It's all white keys. So basically, you can dance all over those white keys, making up little melodic phrases and whatnot, knowing with certainty that none of the notes you play are ever going to sound wrong or bad because you're staying true to the key. Unless the band is doing some experimental jazzy stuff, that's a whole other conversation we'll save for another day. But assuming the band is playing chords that are also in that key, which was the next thing we covered, I'll refresh your memory on that in just a second, then you can dance all over those notes any way you want, making up musical phrases and actually being able to start to speak in the language of music in a melodic sense. And melody, if you recall, is one note after another, whereas harmony is multiple notes played at the same time. So that was where we left off last day, is talking about, okay, well, now we know what 7 notes are in a scale. How do we figure out what 7 chords are built from each of those notes? Like there's a chord that's built from each of those notes, okay? And if I bring the other camera up here, this is what we did. This is what we discovered. So no matter what key you spell up here, make sure you apply the right sharps or flats to it. No matter what key you spell up here, this part at the bottom never changes, okay? There's 3 chords in a key that are major, that always end up being major chords. They're referred to as the primary chords, and they are chords built off of note number 1, 4, and 5. Those just always end up being major chords, okay? 2, 3, and 6 are your secondary chords. They always end up being minor chords. And 7 is your diminished chord. That's the weird sounding one, and I'll play you some of this stuff in a moment or so. Okay, so this may change. If you're in a different key, you would strip this out and spell in whatever key you want to play in, but this part never changes. For example, if you're in the key of E, chord 1 is now E major, okay? Because 1 is always major. Chord 2 is F sharp minor, because the key of E has an F sharp in it, and chord 2 is always minor, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And again, go back and watch episode 2 from yesterday if you want to go a little deeper into that. This is just a recap right now, okay? And by the way, if you do have questions, put them in the comments. I'm following the comments here, and actually I'm going to bring up Restream chat just to make sure there's no comments on any other platforms, which I doubt there will be, but yeah, put your questions in the comments. If I'm talking too fast, I can go back and explain things. So where do we go from here? Well, one thing I want to cover very quickly is what happens when you're in a key that does not have sharps in it, but has flats in it instead. So for example, the key of B flat has flats in it, not sharps. You won't find any naturally occurring major scales that have both. It's one or the other, or in the case of C major, none, right? It's all natural notes, okay? But some of the keys have flats instead of sharps. So if you understand the circle of fifths, that circle starts at C, which is a 0 key, count up in 5s to find every other one around the circle up until 7 o'clock, because there's only 7 natural notes, right? And then the order of sharps, Father Charles goes down and ends battle. It's one simple little step away from understanding the circle of fourths, which is the tool you use to determine how many flats are in a key. So I want to go over that with you real quick. Let me just get a fresh piece of paper here and switch my camera. So here's how it works. It's exactly the same as the circle of fifths. We start with the circle, okay? At noon, 0 is always C, okay? Because C has no sharps or flats. So let me just divvy this up here. Okay, so we've got 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now this is the circle of fourths, which is for flat keys, okay? Circle of fourths for flat keys. Now, if you remember in the circle of fifths, in order to find out what note was at 1 o'clock, we went up 5 from C. Well, this is the circle of fourths, so we do the same thing, but we only go up 4. So now we've got C, D, E, F. So F is the key that has 1 flat in it. And we do the same for the rest. So we start from F. Don't forget to count the letter you're on. So F, G, A, B. And it's actually B flat, but I'll explain that in a minute. B, C, D, E flat. E, F, G, A flat. A, B, C, D flat. D, E, F, G flat. G, A, B, C. We went from C all the way back to C, and this is, of course, C flat, okay? So it's exactly the same process we did, except we used the number 4 when we counted up instead of the number 5, okay? And then if you recall from the order, or from the cycle of fifths, the order of sharps was that phrase, Father Charles goes down and ends battle, okay? The order of flats is exactly the same, except backwards. So it's battle, ends, and down goes Charles Father. Pardon my penmanship, it is not my forte. Okay? So again, it's the exact same thing. So if we wanted to know how many, or if we wanted to know how to spell the key of E flat, for example, then we would do the same thing. We would first write our letters out. E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Put an E on the end just to finish it off, okay? We look here on the circle. It's got 3 flats in it. Which ones are they? Battle, ends, and. So we go battle, ends, and. And I'll just get, that's an E flat, so I'm just going to put a flat on the last E, but don't let that confuse you. There's really only 3 flats. That's the same note as that note, okay? That's why I put a little line there. There's really only 7 notes. So now if we apply what we learned yesterday and we number those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we've got an E flat major, because 1, 4, and 5 are always major chords. An F minor, a G minor, an A flat major, a B flat major, a C minor, and a D diminished. Okay? Move this up a little bit so you can see that a bit clearer. So, is that making sense? Hopefully it is. Put a yes in the comments if that's kind of making sense to you. And then otherwise we'll move along. So if we look at that now, and I grab my guitar. So in the key of E flat, as we just determined, E flat is chord number 1, E flat major, okay? Maybe I'll drop this down a touch so you can see my guitar. A little bit better. Okay, there we go. So here's an E flat major. Chord 2 was F minor, G minor for number 3, A flat major, B flat major, C minor, D diminished, and we're back to E flat major. So now I could play chord progressions, I could improvise chord progressions in the key of E flat simply by knowing how to spell it, where the flats go, and then applying this primary, secondary, tertiary chord theory that we studied yesterday. And just to recap, 1, 4, and 5 are always major chords, 2, 3, and 6 are always minor chords. Adam, yes, all right, brother, cool. And number 7 is always that diminished chord. And I like to play it on the guitar as a minor 7 flat 5, but I won't want to get into that right now. It's a diminished chord with 1 extra note. Okay? And then we're back to E flat. So now I can just pick numbers between 1 and 7. So I've got 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 2, 3. Maybe I'll hang on the 3. 6, 7, 3, 4, 7, 1, and so on. So I'm just making that up. I'm just picking random chords out of the 7 chords that are in the key of E flat. Okay. So now you can improvise both melodically and harmonically in any key, whether it's a sharp key or a flat key, just by understanding the cycle of fifths for sharp keys and the cycle of fourths for flat keys, and understanding the order of sharps, Father Charles goes down and ends battle for sharps, flats, the order of flats, battle ends and down goes Charles Father. It's the same except backwards, okay? And that whoever came up with that phrase, it's one of those phrases that makes sense whether you say it, you read it forwards or backwards, okay? So clever to whoever did that, all right? So if you got questions, like I said, let me know in the comments. But I want to move along a little bit to something a little different today, and that is the topic of chord formulas, okay? So you've probably heard, and again, some of you may know this stuff, that's fine, but this is starting right from scratch music theory in a way that everybody can understand, okay? And if you don't understand, let me know, because I will refine my approach and my explanation. I've been doing this for years as a music teacher, just slowly tweaking how I approach explaining things to try to get the maximum retention and comprehension in my students, okay? So if you don't understand something, please don't be shy, let me know so that I can tweak my explanations a little bit as needed, okay? So, chord formulas. So first of all, what kind of chords, what are the different kinds of chords? You've probably heard of major chords and minor chords. You've now heard of diminished chords because we've been talking about how the chord that's built off of note number 7 turns out to be a diminished chord. And this is what I want to explain. Why does that happen, and what makes a major chord different from a minor chord or a diminished chord or an augmented chord or a sus2 or a sus4 or any of these other things that you may have heard of. So today what I want to cover are simple 3-note chords, 3-note triads, okay? Because there are different kinds of chords. There are chords with 4 notes, 5 notes. Any combination of notes that you play all at the same time is a chord of some kind. What you would call it, well, that remains to be determined. But this is the introduction into what you would call a certain chord. If you played a combination of notes, what the heck is it? Okay, and how do you change it into something else if you want to? Okay, so that's what I want to cover real quickly with you today. So basically the way it works is, let me switch cameras here for a second. If you take a major scale, okay, like C major. If you take a major scale, you play the first note, the third note, and the fifth note of that scale together, you have a major chord. That is always true. If you look at the key of E flat, which we have here, so E flat, if I could take the first note, the third note, which is a G, and the fifth note, which is a B flat, that would be E flat right here, G, and B flat, and if I play those together, you get E flat major. That's the E flat major chord, okay? So that is the formula for a major chord. It's 1, 3, and 5 pulled directly from the major scale. It's the reason why we had to learn how to do this first, because you wouldn't know what the 1, the 3, and the 5 is if you didn't know that E flat had 3 flats in it, for example. You might say E flat, G, B. You would be wrong, because the B is supposed to be flat, okay? That's the reason why we covered that stuff in the first 2 sessions, all right? So let's start making a little bit of a list here. So a major chord, as I just mentioned, equals 1, 3, and 5 pulled directly from any major scale. So if you want to know what notes are in a G major chord, you first have to know what notes are in a G major scale, and then you can pull out the first, the third, and the fifth, play those together anywhere on your instrument. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to play them on one instrument. This applies to whatever sound is in the air. If I hit a C on my piano, and then somebody comes in and plays an E on the guitar, and somebody picks up the bass and plays a G, those notes ringing in the room together make a C major chord, okay? So even if it's not on one instrument, you can split the notes between instruments. It still is a C major chord if you're playing just those 3 notes. If you introduce any other notes, now you're changing things a little bit, and we'll save that for a later conversation. But if those 3 notes are ringing out in the air, regardless of what instruments they come from, that is a C major chord, okay? So what's the difference between a major chord and a minor chord? Well, let me show you. It's real simple. If you want a minor chord, you play the first note, you play the third note flat, meaning you drop it by 1 semitone, 1 key or 1 fret on a guitar, and then you play the fifth. So the difference between a major and a minor chord is only 1 note. It's the 3 or the 3 flat. That's what they refer to as a major third. That's what they refer to as a minor third, okay? So let's look at that. We take our C chord again here. 1, 3, 5, there's our C major. If I take the 3 and flatten it by dropping it by 1 semitone, now when I play those notes, I have a C minor chord, okay? So major, 1, 3, 5, minor, 1, flat 3, and 5, okay? So that's pretty simple. That's the only difference between a major and a minor chord, okay? And this applies no matter what instrument you play. This is just the harmonic theory, diatonic harmonic theory that we have here in the West. As I mentioned, Asia has, India and whatnot have different rules. So what other chords can we make? So we've got a major chord, we've got a minor chord. Well, what's this diminished chord we keep talking about? Chord number 7 is a diminished chord. So a diminished chord is like a minor chord in that it has a flat 3, but it also has a flat 5. Okay? So if we look at the piano, here's C major, flat 3, C minor, flat 3 and 5, C diminished. And you'll notice that the diminished chord has a very odd sound to it. That's got this. It's kind of dark because it's still got that minor 3, but it's even weirder because it's got that flat 5 in it as well. And as you start to learn this stuff, you'll start to recognize what it sounds like when you hear a diminished fifth or all these musical terms that people throw around. You'll start to actually recognize them by ear, which is a wonderful stage to get to, because just like any language, you have to be able to speak and understand what's going on. So not just what can you do on your instrument, but what can you understand that somebody else is doing? Do you understand what they're saying musically? What's actually going on musically? And that comes, of course, with time and with learning this stuff and experimenting with it on your instrument, piano, whatever it is you play. Okay, so we got a major chord, 1 3 5, and again, that's 1 3 5 from the major scale. So you have to know how to spell the scale first. That's why we covered that. Minor chord, 1 flat 3 and 5. Once you know what the 3 is, just drop it down a semitone, and now you've got your minor chord. 1 flat 3 and flat 5, and you've got your diminished chord. There's a couple more that we can do with these 3-note triads, okay? Another one that we can do is an augmented chord. An augmented chord is like a major chord in that it has a major third, but it has an augmented fifth, or a sharp 5, okay? So one of the things I want to explain to you here real quick is that the 3, the third, the middle note in a chord, is what's referred to as the color note, okay? The reason it's called the color note is because it's the note that determines whether the chord functions as a major chord or functions as a minor chord, whether it has a brighter sound or a darker sound, okay? So obviously a major chord functions as a major chord because that's exactly what it is. Minor chord is a minor chord because it has a flat 3. That's the reason why it's a minor chord. A diminished chord also has a flat 3, and the flat 5, of course, to make it diminished. So because it has a flat 3, it still functions like a minor chord. It still has a darker sound to it just by function of that 3. An augmented chord has a major third and a sharp 5. So it functions as a major chord because of that note right there. So let's listen to these chords in the key of C. So here's the C major, flat 3 for C minor, dark sound, flat 3 and 5 for C diminished. Okay, still dark and strange sounding. If I go back to major, 1 3 5, and then I augment that fifth, I raise it up 1. Still major functioning, still bright, but weird sounding because we've altered the 5. Whenever you alter that 5, you add a little bit of weirdness, is the word I like to use, into the sound. So here's a diminished, and here's augmented. Okay? So, again, major 1 3 5, minor 1 flat 3 5, diminished a minor chord with a flat 5, augmented a major chord with a sharp 5. Okay? So the reason why, and again, like I say, if I'm going too quick, throw it in the comments, let me know, but I'll move along. The reason why the diminished chord and the augmented chord have the name that they have is because the word is used to represent the distance between the 1 and the 5. Okay? So a diminished chord means that you've diminished the distance between the 1 and the 5. So you've got 1, you never change 1. 1 is the root, establishes the tone center. It never gets changed. But if you flatten the 5, you've just brought it closer to the 1. So you've diminished the gap between the 1 and the 5. Conversely, with an augmented chord, you've raised the fifth, so you've augmented the distance between 1 and 5. And that's the reason why those chords are called what they're called, okay? So, there are 2 more chords that you can get with these 3-note chords that we're dealing with here. And they are referred to as suspended chords, okay? And what a suspended chord is, and we'll probably wrap it up on this note here. Maybe I'll play some examples, but what a suspended chord is, it means it gets its name from the fact that you're suspending, you're removing the color note, which, if you recall, is the 3 in the chord. That's the note that makes it either major or minor sounding and functioning. That's the color note. So if you take away the 3, you can replace it with one of the notes on either side. Let me show you. So here I got 1, 3, 5. Okay, I try to play this open-handed so you can see what I'm pressing here, right? If I take away the 3, I can replace it with either the 2 or the 4. So this would be a sus2, suspended third, replaced by a 2, and it would sound like this. And here is a sus4, suspended third, replaced by a 4. And you'll notice that these two chords both have a real serious tendency to want to pull the ear back to the major. If I play this sus4 chord, the ear desperately wants to hear that resolution. Same if I play a sus2 chord. The ear wants it to go and resolve back to the C major, okay? So that is, it's actually a technique that you can use if you want to find a chord that leads beautifully back to the chord 1. Just play a 1 but suspend it. And it resolves lovely, beautifully back to the chord, the major chord, okay? So let me get this down here. So we've got sus2, which equals 1, 2, and 5. And we've got sus4, which equals 1, 4, and 5. Okay? So right there, what you've got are all of the chord formulas for all of the 3-note chords. We're going to talk about 4-note chords probably tomorrow. But for all the 3-note chords, this is the formula. And again, all these numbers don't mean anything if you don't know how to figure out how to spell a scale. So if you look, let's say we wanted to play, and since we have the key of E flat written out here, let's say we wanted to play an E flat diminished chord. What would it be? Well, it would be 1, E flat. It would be flat 3, so 3 is a G, so it's going to be a G flat. And flat 5, well, flat 5 is an A flat, which is right here. So it's actually going to turn into a G, because we're dropping it down 1, which you would call an A double flat. But I'm not going to confuse you with that right now. The reason why you would call it a double flat is because you don't want to have 2 of the same letters in the same scale. So if we had a G flat and a G, that would be technically incorrect. So we would call it a G flat and an A double flat. But like I say, don't worry too much about that right now. Just know that you drop it by 1 key or 1 fret on your guitar. So here's my E flat. Okay, let's play major first. Here's my G and here's my B flat. Okay, I'm gonna bring this in a little bit. Okay, so there's my 3 notes right there. If I flatten the 3, it goes here. Now I have a minor chord. Okay, if I also flatten the 5, I have the diminished version. So that would be an E flat diminished chord, because I took the E flat major scale and I applied the diminished formula to pull out the appropriate notes and alter them as needed to make a diminished chord. If I wanted an E flat augmented chord, well, it would be E flat, G, like here, and then it would be, instead of B flat, I would raise it to a B. So now it would sound like this. And there's that major but weird sounding chord, which is referred to as the augmented, because we have taken that 5th interval, 1 and 5, and we've made it bigger. We've augmented it. If we take that 5 and drop it, we've diminished it. Okay? So the sound between those 2 notes, even if I don't play the 3rd, is a diminished sound, and this is an augmented sound, regardless of even if I left out the 3rd, because that distance between 1 and 5 is actually what makes the chord diminished or augmented. So hopefully that makes sense to you. The challenge is going to be applying this to your instrument. Depending on how well versed you are in your own instrument. Like for example, I played guitar for many years before I actually ever sat down and decided to learn what the notes are up the fretboard on each string, right? Now I know where I'm at. I know what, if I want to apply one of these formulas and I need an E flat and a G and a B flat, I know where to find those notes, right? So depending on how familiar you are with your instrument, your mileage may vary as to how long it's going to take you to really start to apply this stuff. But start with just the scale, okay? And the beautiful thing about the guitar, maybe we'll turn this into a little bit of a guitar lesson. unlike the piano or many, many other instruments, is that guitar is very shapes and patterns oriented. So I know once I learn a major scale finger pattern, for example, if I put my finger 2 right here on an A, and I keep this as my hand position, so finger 1 plays this fret, finger 2 plays this fret, 3 and 4, excuse me, then I can figure out the pattern for a major scale, which is finger 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Play that again. So the beautiful thing about the guitar is that is an A major scale because I started on A and I use the major finger pattern. I don't even need to know what notes I'm playing, okay? On other instruments, though, you do need to know what the notes are supposed to be. This, I can figure out the notes. I can go, oh, that's an A. Oh, that's a B. Oh, that's a C sharp right there. There's a D. I can figure them out, but I don't even need to. It's a beautiful thing about these kind of fretted instruments. So if I wanted to play B flat major, I'd just go to B flat right there, put my finger 2 on it, which establishes my hand position, and I can play 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. All right. So that's a wonderful thing, that advantage that we have as guitar players, is that you can learn one pattern and all you need to do is know where to start it, and you've got whatever scale you're looking for. But I guess what I'm getting at is start with melodies. Start with just figuring out the scale on paper, finding those notes on your instrument or your flute or your saxophone or whatever you play, right? And then throw a jam track on in that key and just practice playing along, improvising with those melodies, okay? And then, of course, phase 2 is to start then figuring out what the 7 chords are in that key, like we discussed yesterday, and start figuring out how to play those chords on your instrument, and then just start improvising. Chord 1, chord 6, chord 3, chord 2, chord 4, chord 5, whatever, and start putting those chords together in interesting ways. And then, if you want to go a step further and start to get jazzy with it, even having no understanding of jazz music at all, start breaking the rules. So try playing a chord that's supposed to be major, play it as an augmented chord and see what happens. Play it as a diminished chord and see what happens. But bottom line is, if you like the way it sounds, it's right. If you don't like the way it sounds, play something different. That's all you really need to know, right? But having an understanding of how to transform a chord from a major chord into an augmented chord, that's basically what I wanted to get across today, okay? So, like I said, questions, put them in the comments, but hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully you can kind of go through these phases. Step 1, how do I write the scales out? That was lesson 1. Step 2, okay, how do I play with those notes? Put a jam track on in the same key that the notes are that you've figured out, and just start dancing around, walking around, making little musical phrases. You might do something like I'm just noodling and doodling, right? In the key of A major in that particular case. But if you throw a jam track on YouTube, there's thousands of them on YouTube, then you have musical context. You have actually a band to play to, a groove, a feel, and it's going to inform your decisions. If the band is going, if the band is doing like, you're going to play something different than if it's. You're going to play something different over top of that, right? I played the same 2 chords, A and D, but the feel was different, the context was different, the tempo, the rhythmic context was different. So that's why it's good to throw jam tracks on so you get different musical context to start to experiment over, okay? And then step 3, figure out the chords. Come up with some chord progressions in whatever key you've chosen. Find those chords on your instrument, play through them, improvise chords 1 through 7 in any order that you like. And then the next step is, now that you've learned the rules, break them on purpose, just to see what it sounds like. Let's say, for example, here's a real common one. I'll give you one example of a rule break. Maybe I'll give you 2 of a broken rule that actually is popularly used and sounds quite good. So let's say I was going to do. Let's say I was going to play. We'll talk key of C. Okay, so don't worry about sharps and flats. So I'm going to play chord 4, which is an F, and I'm going to resolve to chord 1, which is a C major. So F major to C major, okay? And chord 4, as you recall, is a primary chord. It's supposed to be major. And chord 1 is also supposed to be major, okay? So that would be correct. Okay? But let's say I break the rule and I put a 4, the F, but I play a minor version of it. So I'm going to start with F, then I'm going to play F minor, which is incorrect technically, and then 1. And listen to what that sounds like. Beautiful. A sound you've probably heard before, right? Just looking forward to it. Okay, Adam, nice. You're very welcome, cuz. No problem. Yo, by the way, we're having an open mic tonight online on Zoom. So if you want to join, let me know. We'll send you the link because all the players are going to jump on the open mic on the Zoom call. And then we're just going to go around the room. Everyone play a song or two, and we're going to broadcast it live on Facebook for everyone else to enjoy. So Adam, hopefully we'll see you there. Message me if you got questions about that. Anyone's welcome, okay? So there's an example of a rule broken that sounds good. And like I said earlier, the bottom line is if it sounds good, it's right. If it sounds bad, change it to something else, okay? Let me give you another one. So by the way, if you want to remember that trick was 4 minor, 1. Now, no matter what key you're in. If I'm in the key of what do I got on the page here? E flat. Chord 4 would be A flat. Chord 1 would be E flat. So here's A flat minor, 1. It has that same effect. You see? And that's the reason why it's advantageous to start to think of your chords in terms of numbers. What is their numeric degree of the scale? Because now there's a trick that you just learned. 4 minor, 1. You can apply that no matter what key you're in. Chord 4 minor, and then 1. Okay? Let me give you another one that I really like, and that is if you take chord 3. Let's say I'm in the key of C, and I'm playing chord 6, which is A minor. Maybe I'll play chord 4, which is F. And then I'm going to play chord 3, but I'm going to play it major, whereas it's supposed to be minor. Okay, let me play it to you diatonically correct first. So it's going to be A minor, F major, E minor, which would be chord 6, chord 4, and chord 3. So it will sound like this. Okay, now I'll play it with the E major. A minor first, chord 4. You see how that it's got a tendency to like make the harmony seem like it's raising, like there's an intensity happening there, because the chord is supposed to be minor, right? Which would be a very dark chord progression. Let me play it again correctly. And then incorrectly. See, it makes me want to do that build, because it feels like something is rising up to the surface. So there you go. So that trick was 3 major. Okay, and again, if you understand the stuff that we've covered over the last 3 days, that'll make sense to you, and that'll become universally applicable no matter what key you're in. So if I did that same thing in the key of E flat, which is what I have on a page here, the chords would be. Oh, almost dropped my guitar. Let's see. So the chords would be chord 6, C minor. Okay, what did I do? Chord 4, A flat major, and then chord 3, but major. So it's going to be a G major. Okay, so that would be like this: C minor, A flat major, to G major instead of minor. So again, if I played that diatonically correct, it would sound like this. Here's with the alteration. And so on and so forth, okay? So there's a couple of examples of ways in which you can break the rules, but you got to learn them first, and that's what we're here to do, right? So once again, if you have questions, even if you're watching the replay, put them in the comments. I'll come back and answer as many as I can. Also, everyone's homeschooling their kids right now. Kids are getting bored and maybe a little too much screen time going on or whatnot. If you know people that are interested in private one-on-one music lessons, whether it's guitar, piano, bass, vocals, recorded music production, please send them my way, because I'm a gigging musician who has no gigs, so I need to see if I can continue working here as best I can. I've been delivering lessons over Facebook video chat or Zoom or Skype, whatever's easiest for folks. So please send them my way. And in fact, I'll type in the chat here a place where you can do that. And that is musicschool.club/register. And I'll actually pin that. I'll pin that comment. And the first lesson's always on me, so there's no risk involved. Just register up so I can get you on the calendar. We can get on the phone and come up with a good time, and then we'll jump online and we'll have a session and we'll see how it works. Okay, Zach, hey buddy, how you doing? And also, if you're enjoying these and you think that they're helpful, and you know people that are maybe not necessarily in a position to subscribe to one-on-one lessons, just send them these videos. This is free content. So share it around. If you know people who are homeschooling their kids and they want to do a music lesson, I started right from scratch. Okay, so share these lessons with those folks and spread the love. And if you want to send a little love my way too, to show your support, there's a PayPal.me link in the title of this stream. And every penny helps. You want to buy me a beer, that'd be awesome. But otherwise, stay safe, keep making music, and we will see you, I think, tomorrow, if everything goes as planned. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to squeeze another one of these in tomorrow. I want to try to do it every day if I can. I've not always been the most consistent person, so this is an exercise for me. All right, cool. So have fun with all that. Get your instruments out, dust them off if you need to, play some music, learn the language of music, start speaking some music, and if you already speak the language and you got something to say, come on open mic tonight. Message me and I'll let you know how that's all done. Every Wednesday night we're going to be doing a live stream open mic with some different guests and different artists on. Okay, we got lots of talented friends, so it should be fairly entertaining. And otherwise, yeah, I'll see you there.